Well, this is the first day by myself. No backup at home, so.
And then to advance the slides, we have to use the keyboard.
It's my fault.
Hello, everybody. It's 2 o'clock. It's a good time to start a meeting. Welcome to the workshop meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council. Mayor Bob Severance cannot be with us this afternoon for this workshop. Let's start by introducing ourselves around the table. I'll go ahead and start. I'm Danny Pagao, Mayor Pro Tem.
Joel Servadius, City Council.
Rick Ulmer, City Council.
Beth Munn, City Council.
Ted Merriman, City Administrator.
Patricia Soul, Finance Director.
Chris Sublett, Harbor Master.
Steve Powers, Development Services Director.
Kathy Rosen, Public Works Director.
Erica Wassinger, City Council.
Thank you. And we have department heads sitting outside the table. Let's start with
Ray Merrill, Fire Chief.
Nicole Tesh, Executive Assistant to the City Administrator. Mary Anderson, Senior Services Administrator.
Emma House, Human Resources Director.
and we got our police chief.
Yes, I'm Kevin Dresker, the police chief, and we have 2 employees that we agreed to intro.
Yes. So we
Thank-
have, you want me to go ahead and introduce?
Yeah, go ahead for the introduction of new employees.
So we have 2 new employees with us today. Lacey Lutz has just began employment with us last week on October 19th. She is one of our new records information specialists. We are very lucky to have her here. She recently worked for Fidalgo Care Center in the Medical Records Department, and we are very lucky to have her now as part of our records team. And then we also have Tammy Glover here. She just joined the city this week on October 26th, and she is our other new records information specialist. And she actually just came to us after many years with the Coopville District. So we're very lucky that she decided to make the change, and we're lucky to have them both on board.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome to the city of Oak Harbor. And now we proceed to the departmental briefings, starting with Special Revenue Fund Budget Review, Marina Senior Center, Streets, Arterial. We'll go ahead.
I'm going to do the Marina.
Start with Marina.
Yeah.
Mr. Sublett.
Thank you. Thank you. I spent a few minutes looking at the Marina budget proposal for fiscal year 2017 and 18. Just a little Marina history. It was built in 1974. Al Cucci and Roger Leonardi were the brainchilds behind that. Al Cucci was a mayor at the time, and Roger went on to be the harbor master for many years. We actually still have the original sign at the Marina, which is kind of neat. So just a little background about the Marina. It has about 423 slips. They range in size from 24 to 60 feet. We have both covered and uncovered slips. We have 96 storage sheds. We offer dry boat storage. And the whole Marina Park covers about 6 acres. We are an enterprise fund. That means that we are self-supported. The bulk of our revenue comes from moorage, our storage sheds, and fuel sales. It's interesting to note that we do not receive any taxpayer funds for the Marina. We are open to the public, and there's a million things to do down there. We have events like the race week and the hydroplanes. We have clubs, the yacht club, youth sailing, the power squadron, the dragon boat club. And there's lots of nature out there and endless photography options as well. One of the biggest questions I get is how much money does the Marina have in reserve? Well, we have about 3 months worth of operating expenses, just under $160,000. We have a bond reserve, about $257,000, and it's required we have that reserve while the bond is active. Our equipment rental reserve is $83,000, and that's for trucks, the boat motors, things like that. And then for capital improvements, we have about $35,000. Really, the big goal is to keep building our reserves. There wasn't long ago when the Marina reserves were very low, so we've now started to bring them back. With that in mind, building the reserves for 2017, we're asking for 1 capital outlay. And in 2018, we won't be asking for any. In 2017, we're asking for new marina management software. We expect it to cost about $20,000. And we'll fund it from the operating budget and from the reserves. The marina management software is kind of the quarterback of the marina. It tracks all the inventory. tells us what slips are full, what slips are empty, what type of tenant is in the slip. Is it a permanent slip? Is it a guest mortgage slip? Is it a liveaboard? It does some monthly billing for us, and it manages all of the tenant's personal information. We currently use the Marina program. We purchased it in 2003, we think. It was long before I came. It's no longer upgraded, and it's barely supported. We have had some hiccups with it in the past few months, so we're really looking forward to some new options out there. As always, I like to end with the Marina staff, because without them, we wouldn't have such a nice marina. Stephanie, Randy, and Neil always do a bang-up job for us. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
2003, I can't imagine what that software, is it DOS?
It's pretty old, yeah. It's difficult to work with, that's for sure.
Mrs. Munn.
So researching a lift, I'm sorry, I can't imagine a marina without a lift to put boats in, and it limits other events to come there, big time.
We are researching options. We've taken a number of steps. As you know, last year we offered an incentive to those 3 boats that used it. We've talked to the boatyard next to us, and it doesn't look like that's going to work out. We've also researched bringing in big cranes. That's extremely expensive because of the distance we have to reach to get to the deep water. We're kind of at wit's end right now. We'd love any suggestions or ideas that you guys may present to us.
We are also following up on a possible capital request through our state elected representatives. We had an opportunity to raise the issue with the Representative Norma Smith when she was visiting the marina a few weeks ago. Dr. Merriman's had an opportunity to speak to both her and Senator Bailey as well. And so we're pursuing whether they can help us with this capital request, sort of packaging it with work that we know we need to do on the physical boat ramp itself. But at this point, we've looked forwards and backwards at our budget, and we're not able to afford to purchase the replacement on our own. So that's why we're looking for outside funding sources.
Okay. Well, I think it's unfair to depend on the backs of the people who have the slips, because their boats are in, and they typically don't take them out. That's why they have the slips, so that they can keep it there also for convenience. And I don't think it should be on the back of the people that are renting the slips or have them in there for permanent moorage. It's an economic development thing, so maybe there's some funds somewhere in there, because if you have events and people bring their boats in, and it's easy for them to put them into the water and get them out, because, you know, a lot of the race boat people came from, well, they come from Oregon, they come from Canada, but Canada's kind of like, well, you don't have a lift, I'm not coming. They came from Montana, I mean, Idaho, there's a whole kind of circuit, people who like to come to that event, but they're not going to come if they can't easily put the boat in. But you're also limiting for some other events by not being able to put boats in, and it's a huge asset.
The costs are about
I know.
$180,000 to $200,000. As I said, we're not able to afford it out of our budget. The only other source that would be potentially available is from the general fund, and that's a policy question for the council.
Right.
And as you know, that's kind of skinny,
Yeah.
right? And so we're beating the bushes in terms of trying to figure out, you know, is it possible to look at these different types of funding sources to see if we can get somebody to help us with this project.
Okay. Well, it might be, I don't know, EDC possibilities that someone hadn't thought of, because it does bring money in. You have to pair it all together besides the capital. So I'm just throwing it out.
And we're just sharing with you where we've been so
Yeah,
far.
yeah. I'm well aware. I've been looking too. Thank you. That's all.
Ms. Blessington.
Not real familiar with the marina. What other types of major assets are in the Marina Department, you know, that to look at just for the future for planning beyond the lift? Are there any others?
Yeah, we have a lot of machinery down there, boats, trucks, that sort of thing. Our infrastructure is now, 42 years old, so that's our biggest thing right now, is dealing with an aging marina. That's our biggest challenge, is the roof structures, the floats, the electrical, the water, all of that stuff is a big challenge. It's an everyday challenge for us.
Sounds like it's something that needs to be planned for, I mean, going forward, not just for the lift, but other assets as well.
Sure.
Challenging part for that, and it's a great comment. The challenging part that we have is trying to balance the rates that we charge our customers so that we're still competitive. And boats are highly mobile, and if we set them too high to try to raise enough money to do certain things on an accelerated schedule, it's likely that we will drive our customers away. If we keep them too low, we're not able even to afford the basic maintenance. So it's truly a sort of a balancing effort. And it's been 3 years.
3 years.
3 years since we've had our last rate increase. We'll be talking with the Marina Advisory Committee at this upcoming meeting to start that process again. And then, sometime either late this winter or early next year, come back to the council with a recommendation as to where those rates should be.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On that note, can you go back to the slide up there where you had the capital budget, et cetera?
That one?
Yes, that one. Under equipment rental and capital improvements, can any portion of that be used for matching funds if you're successful at getting a grant that requires matching funds?
For the hoist?
For
Yes.
the hoist or for even the ramp improvements? Didn't I
Yes.
hear you say you were talking about improving the slope of the ramp? Isn't that one of the
Right.
goals?
That's one of the goals as well. But yes, we have talked to Sandra about using some of that equipment rental fund, and we can definitely do that in the capital improvement funds as well.
Okay, so then the other thing on the hoist, are you looking at a mobile hoist, or are you looking at an in-place hoist?
I actually have a few slides I can show you guys on the hoist that I've drawn that might help clarify things. So just some background, it was constructed in 1974. It's electric. One of the challenges is it has a 6,500 pound weight limit. That's extremely small for today's boats. The length of the boat we can do is 24 to 28 feet, and we can pick up a boat with a 6 to 7 foot keel, depending upon the size, the shape of the boat and how it's made. As Ms. Munn said, the Hoist Users, very few marina tenants actually use it. It's mostly those on the small boat contract. We do have some of the public that uses it, and it's typically to launch or retrieve in the spring and in the fall. Whidbey Island Race Week, we've only had 5 to 7 users over the past 5 years use that per year, not total, but per year. So it's not used very much by Whidbey Island Race Week. And like I said earlier, 3 of those 5 to 7 boats launched elsewhere, and we reimburse them $150 for doing that. What's the return on investment for the hoist? Well, we generate about $2,000 to $2,500 in revenue each year from it. Again, it is part of the small boat contract. If you average out the Marina staff salaries, with benefits, we're at about $49.14 an hour. Most lifts take 2 staff members to do, and it takes 30 to 45 minutes each way. We also spend about $1,000 a year in maintenance on it. We charge $27 for a roller trailer and $30 for a bunk trailer. So the return on investment is somewhere between $0 and minus $50 per lift. What's wrong with the hoist? As you look at that picture of the hoist, you can see the bend in it. 10 of the 11 beams are rotten, 10 of the 11 big beams are rotten. One of the smaller beams is rotten, and the steel I-beam is separating, and that's where you can see the actual hoist motor runs on that steel beam, and you can see the gap there. So really, what's the solutions? We can choose to repair the hoist. We're still very limited on the size of boats we can work with. It's not a benefit to the entire marina. It operates at a loss, but it is possible that in 2018, 2019, we may get a 75% grant to repair it. And at that time, we may be able to increase the capacity somewhat, but it's still not going to meet the needs of every marina tenant. The estimated repair cost, if we were to choose to repair it, is just under $200,000.
In 2016 dollars.
in 2016 dollars. And the Marina Advisory Committee has made it clear that they do not support spending that much money to repair it. So another solution may be to purchase a new truck and trailer. This is a specific model that we've looked at. It's a Conolift sling hoist. It may work well for us. We can lift boats 50 feet or 50,000 pounds out of the water with it. It would be a benefit to the entire marina. It may generate revenue. It definitely creates a new business sector for us because we'd pull boats out and block them up. The unfortunate thing is it doesn't qualify for an RCO grant because it's mobile. The estimated cost for that trailer and a truck to pull it, jack stands, all that stuff, is about $185,000. And any more questions on that?
Any further questions?
Yeah, go ahead and follow up on that then. Thank you very much, that was helpful. So you charge for the hoist? Because it seems to me in the past, we charged for the use of the hoist too.
Oh, yeah,
correct?
definitely.
Yeah. So does that mean we're going to charge for the ramp too?
No, we have not started charging for the ramp.
And why would we charge for the hoist but not for the ramp when we have to replace that floating dock every few years?
I think that it's two separate things. I think that the hoist requires an enormous amount of staff time, and the ramp doesn't.
Now, people go to other places to launch their boats in a ramp, or even to park in it. Go to Anacortes, you can go any number of places.
Right.
You pay to launch, you pay to park. Why aren't we doing that? Why is that a free ride
I'll take this
for people?
So
Now I'm going to look at Mr. Powell.
No, you can look at
Why are we providing a free ride on that one?
As you know, this is a topic that's come up quite a bit over the last several years. We've discussed it on numerous occasions with the Marina Advisory Committee. This last year, they actually made a recommendation that we should begin charging for that. But they also supported the idea that we contact DNR to make sure we understood what the possible ramifications were of starting to charge for a ramp, which is presently free, and it's part of the area that we have under our aquatics lands lease with DNR. And while they wouldn't tell us that it would change they did not believe it was inconsistent with our present lease, as we go into the possibility of renegotiating that lease within the next 2 years, charging for that has the potential to affect those negotiations, and they wouldn't tell us any more than that. Have I summarized that?
That's perfect. That's exactly it.
And so for the dollar amount that the Marina Advisory Committee settled on, which I think was an $8 fee,
$8 per lunch.
it seemed like we might be cutting off our nose to spite our face, and we're more focused on making sure we can end up with a good solid negotiation for the overall DNR lease at this point than we are focusing on collecting money for the use of the boat ramp.
Mrs. Lenz.
Thank you.
So we have a title from the Navy to have the marina there. What does the title cover? Only where the floats are in the water, and DNR owns all the other part? What part covers that title that we have, that DNR doesn't, that dearly wants it?
Well, there's certainly a difference of opinion between the state and the federal government as to the ability of the federal government to deed that land to us directly.
Right.
And at different times over my experience with the marina, DNR has renewed their conversations with us, saying that they intend to challenge us on the validity of that. And that last time that they intended to challenge us is within the last year or two. And so I think the safest way to say is that the validity of that is in question. And DNR has taken the position that the federal government could not directly deed that land to us, that under what they believe the applicable law to be, that it should have gone to the state.
Well, I also know the federal government sees it differently, because we had called on them when we thought they were going to try to do a quick title down in San Francisco, and they said they would help us fight it. So, you know, there's two differences of opinions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, every time that topic comes up, we rally the forces, so to speak.
Right.
We have the conversation. We try to figure out who may be in our corner and who may not be in our corner. But what we know for sure is that we have a lease in which the clock is ticking. And regardless, we're going to have to enter into a new aquatics lands lease. We're working diligently to try to preserve our current status quo, which is not to pay anything. We've had a semi-recent meeting with our state elected representatives and the folks from Des Moines, the marina from Des Moines, to talk about how we might approach it in this coming legislative session. So it's possible that DNR will challenge us on the Navy's portion of it, but what we know for sure is that inside of 2 years we have to begin that negotiation process. And so really we're just trying to not do anything right now for what's a relatively small amount of money that will actually cost us more to collect than we'll make, so that we don't have one additional hurdle as we go through the lease negotiation process.
But what we're looking at is they'll end up charging us $100,000 to $150,000 a year, what they consider lease from our city. It could be as high as that.
Well,
Is what I'm
we certainly
thinking.
know that the number's larger than what we're paying right now, which is zero. But we're working to try to figure out what are the options and how might we go about. And Mr. Alberg helped us 2 years ago try to move that, or a year ago, to try to move the needle on that. We didn't quite do it, but I think we learned some from that effort down there. So we're keeping an eye on all of those things.
And if we were a port district, then we wouldn't have to pay.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Go ahead, Ms. Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. I am inclined to agree with the Marina Advisory Committee that to spend $200,000 on something that makes $2,000 a year doesn't really compute. But if we can find a way, like I thought maybe the economic development grant, especially for the transportable one, might be a good avenue to explore. I mean, the worst they can do is say no, I guess. I'm curious about the ramp. Could that be incorporated into possible shoreline restoration project? I wasn't there at the marina at the last discussion. I was at work, but is that a possibility to partner with them on the ramp?
We've actually drafted a few grants, and we're moving through the process with the ILIO, and that is part of the wastewater runoff portion of the marina grant, is to put a different slope on there so that cars don't have to back all the way in and get their asbestos and copper and exhaust and oil and gas and all that in there. And we're slowly moving through that process, and it's just going to take time for that.
But I think it's fair to say that the staff that's involved at the county side, as well as some of the other agencies, seem to be fairly excited about this particular grant opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Ms. Wessinger.
One more. About the software that is
Yeah.
needed, would that software, just looking forward into the future, if changes are made in fees and collecting fees for different uses at the marina, would that software have the capacity to be able to keep track, collect fees people pay online? And just thinking ahead, if changes are made, I'd like to see the software that we purchased maybe be able to handle any of those changes.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. We're looking at cloud-based software where you can log into your own account, you can pay your bill online, you can make changes on your address, that sort of thing. So yes, it's definitely going to be cutting edge.
Something easy, like somebody said, I think Ms. Heisen, the cost of, or somebody of implementing fees outweighing, the fee
Mhm.
itself. So just if that software could make it, or maybe it was Mr. Powers to make it much more efficient if we do start collecting fees, so that it's not taking a lot of.
Right.
lot of
Definitely. The fees that Mr.
staff time, yeah.
The fees that Mr. Power alluded to is everywhere where we collect money, where we have a drop box for an envelope, we have to check that every day, and that takes 3 employees to check. 2 to check it, 1 to confirm it and log it into the computer. So that's the challenge when you charge a relatively low fee for something.
Yes, follow up on that. You know, when I go to other ramps, for example, Washington Park in Anacortes, use your credit card. Why can't we do that, where you have a debit card, credit card. I mean, that's how so many other things are paid for, you know, whether it's parking on the street in Seattle or getting a Orca card for riding those systems that are in a Orca. I mean, what's difficult about that?
One of the capital outlays that we had outlined for 2018 that we cut off was actually for a kiosk out on FDOC where you could log in when you brought your boat in, pay for your slip right there at the kiosk, that sort of thing. What we want to make sure we do is that we get a software package that ties in with that type of technology. The piece of technology that allows you to make that payment away from the marina office, at the boat ramp, out on FDOC, wherever, is extremely expensive, in the neighborhood of about $20,000. If we tie it in with the software package and we go to what they tried at the RV park where we have like an iPad or something like that out there, it makes it much more affordable, almost nothing, next to nothing to get going. But we need to make sure we have that software piece to be able to do that first.
And then the capital outlay for the actual kiosk itself,
Right.
And you've done research as to what those are. Do you recall off the top of your head the range of costs associated with those?
They were anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. When you look at, yes, when you look at the boat ramp, for example, that's heavily used for about 5 months out of the year. And the rest of the year, it's not used very much. So we also have to weigh that cost compared to how many times it would actually be used in the credit card fees, that sort of thing. I mean, there's months that the boat ramp isn't used at all just because the weather's so bad. But that is the kind of technology that we do want to employ eventually down there, definitely.
Now, before we go to the next one, Marina is being run like an enterprise fund, and revenue and funding derived from the users. In one of your reports, previous report, you set up a goal to put funds for capital project for next 30 years. Is it being materialized or haven't started yet?
It wasn't until a couple of years ago that we could really start putting money into the reserves. There for, well, up until a couple of years ago, it was extremely rough going at the marina. We were actually taking from our reserves to supplement our operating budget. So the goal is to build the reserves, all of the reserves, so that we don't get back in that situation where we were at one time.
What transpired 30 years ago. So we'll proceed to the next one. Now, thank you, Mr. Suplet.
Thank you.
Go to Senior Center. Welcome, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here as the longest long-term staff person at the Senior Center. I've been here a year now. So I'm speaking to you from that position, and I'm happy to do so. I'm really happy about what's happening at the Senior Center. So the mission of the Senior Services is to empower older adults in the city of Oak Harbor and surrounding areas for personal independence, healthy aging, social connection, and lifelong learning. And we do a specific and direct emphasis on independence, keeping people in their homes for as long as possible and independence for as long as possible. That is the focus of many of our decisions around program. So we have a lot of responsibilities. One of the first is to provide classes and activities that hopefully are evidence-based as often as possible, which means that they've actually been documented to do what they say they're going to do and have been peer-reviewed. So we keep a sharp attention toward that. We are diligent now in collecting data and assessing that data for decision-making, so we're making a lot of our decisions about programs and services based on numbers and not on feelings. We are steadily practicing responsible stewardship of our finances, as well as doing a good job of maintaining the building and trying to keep things under control there. And we also have gotten better and better at promoting and communicating with folks about what we're doing. We want to maintain the facilities as being attractive, safe, and welcoming. Safety appropriately is the primary focus, but we also want everybody that walks into that building to feel welcome and to feel like this is a place where they belong. We are very diligent with our volunteer program. We have between 40 and 50 volunteers who contributed about 4,000 hours this last year of their time. And we have gotten better this year in particular about screening them and training them and maintaining communication with them. And then we also strive to be a central community resource for information for older adults, not just on our programs and services, but what the other things that are happening in the community. So going forward, we have some goals. We want to be involved in the conversations and meetings and plans for what things that are happening in the community so that we can be a voice for older adults. This may be things such as parks, new park design or plans for parks. Could be housing, could be transportation. So we would like to make a point of being involved in those conversations. We are striving to have a better and better impact on the financial sustainability of the center. I think we're doing an excellent job in exceeding expectations in the delivery of services. Customer service is a high priority. We have a goal of wanting to maximize the usage of the center building, and that may be something that's well beyond senior programming and may involve other populations using the facility. And we've been working hard and want to continue as a goal of creating opportunities for a center without walls. And this includes things like using the libraries, using school buildings, using other community resources, instead of necessarily feeling like we have to reinvent something or create something ourselves, being able to borrow and cooperate with the community. So this year, in this 1 year, I've been there a year, the program coordinator has been there 10 months, and our program assistant has been there 4 months. And this is what we've done, and I'm extremely excited about it. We have implemented many business model procedures for the planning and managing of the center, and I'd be happy to elaborate on some examples of that if you'd like. We received $4,200 from the Senior Center Foundation to get a touchscreen check-in system that allows our members to check in, and it also allows us to communicate with them. Long-term, the system is able to allow folks to register online for classes. That's not something that we can implement right away without some other procedures in place, but it primarily allows us to collect really good data about where our members live, how old they are, how the center is used. We were also awarded a $12,000 grant from the National Council on Aging to implement the Aging Mastery Program. It's a 10-session program. We've already completed one for 30 participants. We will do one more in January and then another one next March. Our plan is to reach about 100 people to take that course. It's an amazing course. We also received $2,800 in funding from Group Health, and I don't have up there, but an additional $700 from the Oak Harbor Senior Center Foundation to procure the program license for Enhanced Fitness, which is a evidence-based fitness program that we will, and that would be an excellent example if we have time and if you have interest for me to show you how that came to be under a business model, us using a business model. And we've partnered with the community to establish a pickleball program, also a really exciting opportunity. We started out with in our own backyard with Hank from the Parks Department, putting us in touch with the school district and getting access to the old tennis courts behind the school. And painting, they helped clean and paint those for us, and we have a club now of over 20 people playing pickleball. The result of that now is that we are able to partner with the Christian school to do indoor courts that they will charge us a reasonable rent for, and we have more than enough people that are paying a monthly fee so that we'll be making money on our pickleball club and everybody gets to play. So all exciting accomplishments. And here's our challenges, some of our challenges. One that I don't have on there that I was thinking about just as I was sitting is we are highly volunteer driven. So because we have 40 plus volunteers doing reception for us and cashiering and money handling and all kinds of things, there's challenge in that, in maintaining and getting people who are really competent. We've had volunteers that have been there, some of them well over 20 years, which is very, very exciting, but offers its challenges. We are seeing declining numbers, of course, in the traditionalists, which are the seniors that were born before 1946. They're going away. They're just aging out, or they're no longer physically able to come into the center. And so we have a challenge of also being able then to find offerings that are relevant to the baby boomer age seniors. We have a definite challenge in that we've had decreased funding from our community partners, including Senior Services of Island County and the county itself. We have a challenge in finding ways to provide programs that are financially sustainable. And our building is 30 years old. The center is 30 years old, and so the aging building is meaning that we have some issues in terms of repair and maintenance. So I think that one of the best ways for me to talk to you about the budget is not so much to show you details about expenses, because those don't change a whole lot, but revenue does. And the challenge from 2015, if you look at the far left in each of these columns, the amount in gold was donations primarily circuitously from the county, funneled through SSIC and back to us. And those have been dwindling. This last year, 2015, the end of 2015 was the last year that we had a commitment to receive donations from county dollars. Some of those, because of just the delay in receiving checks, flowed into 2016, so you still see the $35,000. But going forward, what you see left as the $15,000 there is a regular donation that we get from Island Thrift. So they give us $1,200 a month, and then we get some miscellaneous donations. So that's consistent donation money that we can count on. We do receive some, Oak Harbor Senior Center Foundation, as you saw, gave us the funding for the touchscreen system and for the evidence-based fitness program. But that's not a general recurring amount of money. So the green in the middle is the funds that the Senior Center has generated through its own programs and services. And that would be travel program and classes, passports. In 2016, a piece of that is the $12,000 grant that we got from the National Council on Aging. So that's a little bit artificial because that's not necessarily recurring, although I certainly would continue to look for more money in terms of grants. And I am not afraid to beg at all. But that's what we're looking at for 2016. So as we go forward, that donation money continues to dwindle. Our focus is on increasing our revenue through programs. In 2016, we've been able to do that because for the first time, we've offered classes that are fee-based. So we actually incur some profit from that. And we'll continue to do that in 2017 and 18. In 2017, you see that really a much larger increase in the amount requested or that we would need from the general fund. So that'll be on the expense side, and of course, it's on our revenue side. And that increase is primarily due to building-related things. So building repairs, actually, let me refer to my notes real quick for that, so I can give you good. We need to replace the panic bars on our front doors because we can no longer easily lock them or unlock them. We end up calling a locksmith at 7:30 at night, and we need to replace entry carpet because it's buckling and it's a falling hazard. Everything's very safety related, the things that we need to take care of in the building. So none of it is for cosmetics or for, wishing that something else could happen there. We do have a $5,000 request to have some consulting time, sometime with a consultant, to take a look at what potentially could be done to the building to make it more useful for more people. And in terms of meeting rooms or rentals. And I should mention in the increase in 2016, also besides class fees, we did increase our rental income. So that would be the things that we'd be looking to do over the next couple of years, is increase program fees from classes and events and also rental income. And then the other increase in our expenses, which transfers into general fund, is the amount of money that we need to put into the bus replacement fund. Okay, so this is just some more comments on the building. We had money funded in our budgeted in 2015-16 to replace the roof. But the roof actually is not leaking. It doesn't really need to be replaced. At some points it does, but the big issue is just that a lot of shingles fly off during heavy windstorms. So those shingles need to be replaced, and that's what we did in the winter of 2015 and then all of 2016 when that happened. But that cost doesn't come anywhere close to replacing a roof. So in talking to Rich Tiehouse and others, there was a strong belief that we could delay the replacement of the roof for at least a couple of more years. And so we have just a little bit of extra money in the budget for the labor, primarily to replace those shingles when they fly off. We're going to be installing a panic button alarm system for a number of reasons, for safety and also because things happen at the center to people. So that will be a cost, and then it will be a recurring $35, I think, a month for the service. It's the cellular service. Then I mentioned the carpet and the panic bars. And the accordion partition, which looks like this, that's the wooden accordion. Those little pieces on the side are pieces that have fallen off. And then it's just torn and shredded. And I don't know if you want to, Patricia, to address that any further information at this time in terms of the change of that or not.
I will. I'll borrow one of Joe's sayings, which is, it's past its useful life.
It is. Yeah.
I don't know why you just don't leave it open.
We don't use it. We don't use it. It's not safe. It's actually very unsafe. So we just want to take care of those safety issues at the center. So, questions?
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Well, it's not exactly a new bus, but is it still making some money for you? I mean, you got a little bit larger, you had place to put things for shopping or bags or things like that. So is it still working out well and able to get qualified drivers and things like that?
It is. Okay. So it is. But one of the things that Steve and I have talked quite a bit about and others is trying to not be in the transportation business, because being in that transportation business is higher risk to the city. There's many risks involved in that, and honestly, there's other providers of transportation, private industry in the area. So we would be looking in this next year to put together a request for proposals to see if we can't replace that piece of our travel with a private entity in the community, in which case we won't have the expenses of the repair and maintenance of the bus or setting money aside for a new bus. The amount that we take from members, so we take for every trip that somebody goes on, we take $6 and put it aside toward a new bus. That will probably still be built into their travel expense, because I anticipate that a private provider's cost, and we know what that's going to be. We already have an idea what that's going to be, but we will save. We'll save on the repair and maintenance, and not have to replace the bus. So that's a goal for next year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mr. Chabay.
Mary, I don't know if you can answer this one, but traditionally, or as I understand it, the county had a share of approximately a third. The city and the senior center would raise the other third. And as you showed, even further declining, I guess it was donations column.
Right.
I don't know if the right word is leverage, but if we take care of a cross section, it's not just residents of the city of Oak Harbor that use those services.
Yes.
How is it that we can't expect more from Island County in terms of support? Anyone want to field that one?
Well, I can start the answer, but then because I'd like to tell you, because I have the correct numbers from my data collection system, I can tell you that you are right, and that 54% of our paid members are residents of Oak Harbor. 32% are Oak Harbor count that aren't residents, but in Oak Harbor zip code. 12% are from Coopville, and then there's another 2% that are from other cities.
Tagging on to that, first of all, I think Mary deserves a lot of credit for implementing the touchscreen system, which really allows us to get these numbers so that we really know who's using the center and gives us that great data to work from. We absolutely believe that it's appropriate for us to have a conversation at the policy level with the county about revisiting their ability to participate with us. I mean, But what I think helps us in this particular case is that we have data that now will help us indicate to them where these folks are coming from. We're certainly sensitive to the budgetary issues that the county has had over the years, but we think that this is a partnership that's worth continuing to explore. So we think it's a conversation that isn't going to be resolved today, obviously, but we think it's one that we'd like to have.
I would encourage that.
Yeah, sure. Ms. Massinger?
I have a couple questions. Just a very basic one that I probably should know the answer to, but what is there a monthly fee to join the senior center to have access to it, and what is that fee?
It's an annual fee, and it's
Annual
$40.
Annual fee? Okay. And then my second question or comment came about the partition. It's very shocking. But I know you had mentioned a few slides before that about looking at ways to maximize or use the space, maybe paying for a study, maybe you said, I don't know if I heard that correctly. But if you're gonna do that, again, thinking in the future, it may be smart to sort of plan your partition or what you wanna do to sort of go along with that, you know, thinking of what's the best way if you're looking at using the space for other community events, rentals, just to look ahead and make sure you get the right kind of partitions that you need.
Sure.
Just to
I think that makes sense.
Prudent.
If it were not as dangerous as it is. I do think that makes sense, and for sure, I think that's a really important consideration when we think about like replacing the roof, for example. Because let's say hypothetically it was determined that this could be a building that could be made larger and used for the community, then it would be silly to replace a roof right now. Yeah. So that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
To just emphasize what Steve said, being able to quantify the data for who's using the senior center and where they're from and for what things is going to be invaluable, because if we can say that almost half of the senior center users are located outside of city limits, but we're the ones funding it, then I think that makes for a very compelling argument. So yeah, it might be time to revisit that conversation. And my question is about marketing or public outreach. I just Googled the senior center, and you're on the City of Oak Harbor's page, but it doesn't appear that you have like your own website or any social media. So how do you get the word out about what you do and what services you offer? How do you go about doing that?
You know, that's a really good question, and it is a challenge. We do have a Facebook page, a senior center Facebook page. It's tough because when we look at our data, we have about 40% of our members have email. So what do you do with the rest? And we don't really have a budget or for producing a glossy publication and sending it out. In fact, we were sending out a quarterly brochure, and now we're not going to mail that anymore because of the cost. It's just a high cost. Right now, what we do is we put it on Channel 10. We do it to the chamber. This last speaker, we had Dr. Jerry Sanders speaking yesterday. We had that in the Whitby News Times calendar. And we do have a brochure, a quarterly brochure that we make for the members. The touchscreen, the system that we have also allows us to do a voice connect, a recorded voice that we can send a message out to everybody. Joe and everybody's smiling because I did the first one this weekend to be scheduled to be delivered between 1 and 4 on Sunday, and it got delivered at 7 a.m. on Sunday. So the chances of me using that again right away are a little low. So really open to suggestion about other ways that we could get the word out. I would welcome any kind of help with that.
I can see with your demographics that the challenges you face, but looking forward, demographic-wise, what do you anticipate, in our area for? You mentioned the traditionalists who are much older, and then sort of the baby boomers. I'm imagining baby boomers are like 65. Does that sound about right? In general, I assume Steve, the planner, would know. the demographic of a baby boomer. I wasn't talking age, but no, I mean,
Baby
looking
boomers were
forward.
born between 1946 and 1964.
Okay.
And then then the Gen Xers, and then the millennials.
But as you move forward, you see, I mean, I can imagine there's maybe like a gap there where, you know, your membership may be low when you try and move up to those early baby boomers. But I imagine too that those baby boomers may be a little more technologically savvy, if you will.
Right.
Maybe they've been exposed to it more, so I could see in the future, you know, that you being able to use more technology and email maybe and social media, maybe they'll be more apt to help us out.
That's
there.
the dream. And you're right, because the traditionalists are dwindling, our membership is declining. And at this point, there's not much reason to believe that it will go the other direction. So, and that's a whole longer conversation, but yeah, I think there is a gap there. You know, certainly pickleball and some of the other things we're doing are more relevant to the younger seniors, but that's it.
Just a short suggestion.
Mhm.
You're talking about a group, a lot of them don't have emails and stuff, but I would venture to say a lot of them go to church, and churches are trying to provide education and ways to keep their congregation going and also to help them, because it also helps on pastoral care. So if you have a good speaker, there might be a way to be able to put them into church bulletins or to plug into theirs, but that's kind of the group that if they're not going here, they're probably attending church. And then the church is trying to work with ways of how to help their congregation, not just spiritually, but physically too, because they're pastoring no matter what their needs are. And so that might be a short-term solution that you may be able to hook up on and see where that might go.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for attending. Ms. Anderson, you mentioned that you have declining membership. Do you have a graph on that shows the trend? If you were able to show us on the revenue expense side of that.
I can provide that. I can get that for
Do
you.
you?
I don't have one today.
Is it broken down in terms of age also, so that you know what the groups are that are either expanding or declining?
Well, I wouldn't now. Going forward, because we are collecting data now, we will have that
Okay.
information, but we don't have it historically. Historically, now we just have it by year, how many members.
Wouldn't that help you with your marketing if you knew what your target market really looked like?
Yeah, that's why we're so happy to have this. So we only have right now about 5 months worth of data. So, the more we get, the better job we can do.
The next question is, your graph up there showed declining revenues from the county, yet you have out-of-city members up there. Do you have a tier fee system?
No, but this is one thing we've discussed, not only in terms of residency versus non-residency. We've already implemented it for program, but more in member versus non-member. But there are cities like the city of Renton, for example, that charge, well, they don't charge anything for residents, but they charge non-residents a membership fee. And so that is one of the things that we would look at, and that would be something that we would discuss as a policy change going forward.
And then the other one is, do you have a program for seeking contributors or bequests? A lot of senior centers do that. I mean, it's a great market right there. People like to leave memories. Do you have an active program for contributors?
We don't have an endowment program, which is something that I have talked to the Center Foundation about working together to do. But we do have a program where people give donations, and they then get this bronze leaf that goes on it. We have a really big tree, a memorial tree in the center. So, and it's $250 for that. I also know that we had a member pass away recently that requested memorials be sent to the center. Typically, when that happens, those go through the foundation. That money is donated to the foundation and then comes back to us that way. And I need to clarify why.
Because the contributor gets the tax benefit of making the donation to the foundation, and then the foundation then passes it along to us.
So if they contributed directly to the city, they wouldn't get the...
They don't get the tax benefit.
So the foundation is a 501(c) or whatever. But you do have that going, where you have an endowment program going. But is it very
That's a
active?
donation program. It's, oh, well,
It's not
I
broken
wouldn't
down
say
on
it's
your,
very active.
it's
You know, it would
broken
be,
down.
it would be included in donations from the Senior Center Foundation.
It'd be interesting to see those sources of revenue
Sure.
up there, as long as, I mean, we know there's something out of the general fund, but a lot of senior center, a lot of programs, not just senior centers, but, you know, you go to the performing arts programs.
Right.
Everybody is out there trying to get some type of contribution to get recognition and memorials for people too. They do it at the hospital, you know, they have that over at the
Right.
hospital, like the leaf for the trees and stuff.
Right, yeah, it's like that. That's what we
Yeah.
have, is like the leaf
I
for the
can't
tree.
recall, Mr. Ornberg, that in my association with the center that we've received significant donations through an endowment process. I think they've been more on the smaller side for the Leafs.
Have
What-
we ever tried to go after it and
Well,
promote that kind of?
And that's where I was just going is we have 2.75 FTEs at the senior center. So so Mary's the only full-time staff person that we have. The other two staff persons are both part-time. And she would not say this herself, but I will say it on her behalf. There's really no way to add something like becoming truly pounding the pavement on an endowment program to the workload that our paid staff has. What I think we'd have to do is be able to work more closely with the foundation and see if the foundation would be willing to take up that charge on our behalf. Because we just really can't add an additional comprehensive set of duties to our existing staff.
So who makes up what kind of people make up the foundation? Just volunteers or?
They have, yeah, they are volunteers. So Al Pucci is the president
Yeah.
of the foundation, and then there's 4 other members right now. They meet irregularly, and they, at this point, don't generate their own income. They get the income from our bingo goes there and through the foundation. These donations go through the foundation. So they're basically, and then we meet, and then I request money back out from them. That's how that setup is right now. I do want to follow on what Steve was saying a little bit. So one of our sources of revenue is passports, so we're a passport acceptance agency. So almost $30,000 of our income this year will come from passports. But that almost takes somebody working 3 full days a week to do that. We do about 90 to 100 of those a month. We added passport photos about 4 or 5 months ago as just a value added, and another $10 per person that comes in there. So that should generate I don't know, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 next year. But that's it takes the staff time.
I'm not going to beat this thing to death. If there is a trifold
Yeah.
in that program and people are reminded, take this trifold, it has an application, you can donate money, you can go to PayPal, you can go to his bank account. People they can't say no unless you ask them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Understood.
Okay?
Thank you.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let's move along, and thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you.
If you have any more questions, you can talk to Mr. Powers or Ms. Anderson. I think we have just about 1 hour left for the rest of the items in our agenda. We're moving along to Public Works, starting with the streets. Our Public Works Director, Kathy Rosen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. So we're going to talk about the street division. That's Fund 101. And the mission of the street division is to maintain our streets, right-of-ways, related facilities in a safe manner that complies with local, state, and federal standards and regulations. Excuse me. So the streets fund has responsibility for maintenance activities over all of our streets, including the local residential streets, collectors, arterials, everything except the highway that runs through town. And this fund includes all of the FTEs that work in the streets division. Our major sources of revenue, there's 2 real sources of revenue. The first one is Capron funds, and that is a special it's a special section of the RCWs, and it's a refund of vehicle license fees and fuel taxes that goes only to island counties. So only Island County, cities in Island County, and San Juan County receive this money. And you can see 2017, we're estimating about not quite $670,000 in CAPRON funds and $672,000 in 2018. Our motor vehicle fuel tax is our other main source of revenue, and that runs around $330,000 a year, maybe a little bit more in 2018. And I was talking with Dr. Merriman earlier, and I remember, I've been here almost 19 years, I remember a time where those numbers were switched, where CAPRON was about a third of our revenue and gas tax was 2/3. And so we've seen this change. We do get some other revenues from permits, and there's some new legislation that passed, I think, last year for intermodal transportation revenue, and those come into about $57,000, $58,000 a year. So our organizational structure, there's the Public Works Director. We have a third of Operations Manager, FTE, that's Rich Tyhouse. We have one lead street specialist. We have 5 FTEs authorized as street specialists, but we only have 3 of those positions filled, and it's been many, many years since we had 5 street specialists in the division. That's because we didn't lay anybody off, but we saw the changes in our revenue, and we just didn't replace people when they left. And then we have a part-time seasonal that works in the summer. It's really probably more like, well, it's less than a half of an FTE, just a few months. So responsibilities for the streets division, I'm not going to read through all of these, but it's pretty significant. We have 73 plus or minus miles of paved roadways. The city owns 8 signalized intersections. That doesn't include the ones along the highway. We own and maintain 271 street lights that were recently converted to LED, more than 2,900 traffic and street signs, all of the pavement markings and channelization. And then we also have to fund the power for and the cost for Puget Sound Energy for over 1,000 Puget Sound Energy owned streetlights. And the cost, our payment to Puget Sound Energy for street lighting is about $185,000 a year. So of that $1 million of revenue that we get every year, more than 17% right off the top goes to just keep the streetlights on. Those 3 street specialists plus their supervisor, the lead, are also responsible for performing snow and ice removal. They support the engineering division by collecting traffic data and installing traffic calming devices such as speed humps. And they provide support for community events, the traffic control for parades and those kinds of things, as well as putting up and taking down any banners. And finally, if we do have inclement weather, if we've got really windy conditions and trees are coming down, the streets crew are right out there with the fire department removing trees from the roadway and that type of thing. So in 2017 and 2018, we're asking for money to have a program where we every year try to implement and install an audible pedestrian crossing upgrade at our various pedestrian crossings, and then install battery backup maybe at one of our city-owned signals, so we're just doing a little bit at a time. Alternative transportation improvements, about $5,000 a year for ADA sidewalk improvements, and then $10,000 a year for sidewalk replacements and missing links. And then we try to budget about $5,000 for traffic calming. Those are the speed humps and those kinds of things. And then in 2017-18 budget, we're requesting $300,000 a year for overlays and or chip seals on our residential streets, and that money would come from our beginning fund balance and REIT. We also have our ongoing waterfront trail restoration project. We haven't been able to complete that this year, so we're rebudgeting that in 2017. And that is funded mostly by a grant, and any overage would come from paths and trails. And then the other project that we have proposed in this budget is an access road on our property out there known as the old Boyer property. To provide access to those commercial properties, we're proposing that we develop an access road across our property, because the traffic on the highway has changed such that those properties are not going to be able to have access off of the highway anymore. And we're hoping to apply for a rural economic development grant for that roadway. So some of our challenges, and I'll let Joe speak to this, we don't have a consistent revenue source for a pavement management system, which is seals and overlays and reconstruction. I was really happy at the last budget workshop to hear our finance director and our city administrator talk about the need for a financial sustainability plan, because this is really important to us in streets. So Joe, do you want to explain that graph a little bit?
Well, it's something that engineers like, graphs, right? So I found this from the FHWA's website. What it shows is the pavement quality. It declines. It stays nice for a while, and then all of a sudden it drops off like you wouldn't believe. So the key is to stay up on top of maintenance before it drops off. And so what you might see in some of our overlay programs that come up is you might see a street that, hey, that looks okay. Why are they out there messing with that one? Mine looks terrible. It's because we're trying to keep it up there where it's really much less expensive to maintain. If we let it fall off the curve, it's at least according to the FHWA, it's you spend $1 on maintenance or $6 to $10 rebuilding it. So, since I've been here, I don't know that we've done a prescribed overlay program on any of the local streets, and I don't know if anybody here remembers the last time. So I know, and I know from driving around town myself that a lot of our streets are pretty far down on that curve. So I'm going to do my darndest to keep the ones that are in good shape, and then work hard on pushing you guys to help get some funding for getting our other streets into shape too.
Some other challenges, the city is increasing in size, annexations, new development. We're taking on more streets, more street lights, more area that our existing staff has to maintain, so that we're doing more with less. This is always a concern, especially when the state is experiencing their own budget difficulties. They could modify that RCW that's related to CAPRON funds, and right now those make up 63% of our revenue, and those could go away because they really only apply to Island County and San Juan County. And then once we reach, under the current RCWs, once we reach 25,000 in population, we have 3 years, and then we have to take over the maintenance of the highway, and that includes all of those traffic signals as well as the paved surface, and those traffic signals are going to be costly to maintain. Our current population is 22,410.
And that last one is a legislative priority, isn't it, to work on that?
Yes.
That limit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Martin.
So,
Any questions? Ms. Wasinger?
I may have to look at Mr. Powers again too, for a good reason this time. So when neighborhoods, this is just another basic general question about streets. When you guys all may know this. Are some new neighborhoods or developments responsible for maintaining their own streets and doing overlays, or are those all fall on the city? Are there some these planned residential developments? I'm just not real clear on.
We went through a period of time in the early 2000s where the development community really wanted the private streets. Primarily for one reason, because it gave them more design flexibility than what we were able to accommodate in a regular public street. And so some of the developments out there from the early 2000s will have those private streets, which in our experience tends to work very well for that first set of homeowners. Once you get to the second set of homeowners and then the maintenance starts to happen, they say to themselves, well, why are we taking care of the street, right? And then they tend to show up down here and they ask you folks to take those over as public streets. So we've really stopped doing private streets. That was the build up to, we've stopped doing private streets. And what we've done instead is to provide additional flexibility in our design standards so that there are more choices for street widths and sidewalks and those kinds of things. But they are still public streets so that they are then built to a public street standard. And that's the real key, because the private streets didn't have to follow that standard and generally would deteriorate more quickly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chabete?
The motor vehicle fuel tax, do we have any discretion or authority over that to increase revenue?
No, that comes from the state.
That's a state tax. It's a flat amount per gallon. That's why you see when gas prices go up, many people think, well, your motor vehicle fuel tax is going to go up. It doesn't. It actually goes inverse to that.
Right.
Higher the price goes, less sales, less tax. So we don't have control over that. That's all at the state level.
Okay. Next one, PSC versus city-owned streetlights. We have 271 versus 1,000.
Yes.
Where are those? I thought we had everything but 20, but that seems disproportionate.
Sprinkled all over them.
Yeah, they're
Yes, the
sprinkled all
PSC
over.
lights are all usually the developments. When a developer builds, when they put in a development, those usually are put in by PSC, and then we just take over the contract, the responsibility of those lights. Most of the lights that we own were the ones that were put in on new arterials or street improvements that we did. And sometimes we take them over as a street. Some of them are taken over because of the state highway. State highway is the majority of my lights that I own. Part of this agreement with the state is I took over lighting a long time ago.
Right.
You know, and so I own all those lights on the state, which the state usually puts in power meters and they own and control the lighting.
So are 185,000, I think was the number, at 1,000 lights, are those LED? Are they more efficient? Or are they still?
You know, it's an actually fun part is if you're to drive around town and you were to see the ones that are LED, those are probably ours.
Through the Amoresco?
Right. And so the ones that aren't are probably, there's a good chance that they're PSC. And I know that there's the Transportation Improvement Board, I believe there's a grant program where they're going to smaller cities and trying to help get those replaced. I don't know what the end result will be for us, if that will actually see a cost reduction or not, but that's...
It's a big number. It'd be interesting to cut that thing.
It is a very big number.
And we are installing LEDs with Puget Sound Energy. All the lights we have put in now through PSC are all LEDs. Okay. That's the new standard.
All right. And lastly, the FACMA SR20 extension or access road, the grant is not yet secured?
It is not yet secured or applied for.
Okay.
But that is something we'll be working on.
Good. Thank you. Dr. Merriman?
I have one thing to add on this too. One thing my office has been working on is there are some options available to cities for increased funding for transportation. One right now, the FAST Act was passed at the federal level. It's primarily for highway work and things along that line. The other one that we can do as a city is a transportation benefit district, and we'll be bringing forward more information to you about that. How it works in just the nickel tour version of that is the city establishes their city limits as a transportation benefit district or TBD. You can, as a council, set a couple different ways to generate revenue. To do that, it's only for a certain period of time. Districts, TBD, I think the maximum you can do is 10 years. So what you have to do is do a pavement inventory of your city streets, rank those depending on which ones are needed the most, and do that. Then you establish your TBD. You can get funding sources through sales tax, or the other one is license tab fees. And you dedicate that revenue toward your street projects. you go out to your community and say, over the next 6 years, we're gonna have a TBD, we're gonna generate this, and we're gonna do these streets. At the end of that period, you wanna have that program completed, and then your TBD expires. So that's just one opportunity we have. Last Wednesday, I was at the AWC regional meeting over in Burlington, and one of the questions that was asked of all the entities that attended there by AWC was, what are your number one budget priorities? And to a city, every one of them said streets. And they're all looking for different funding mechanisms. And probably maybe half of the cities there had recently established a TBD. So it is one of those mechanisms we can look at least have that discussion and see if that's something we want to entertain.
I think the downward trend first, then I can. Go ahead. Oh, okay.
And I just had a quick clarifying question. You say the streets that are quote needed the most.
Mhm.
Does that mean the most?
Use or the ones most in need of?
Need of repair.
Okay, thank you.
So to go back to what Joe was saying, though, the money, if you do a true pavement management system, the standard is you put your money in the streets that have not yet reached that downward point of the curve yet, so you maintain them at a good level. They're in good condition because it's much less expensive. And then you work on the ones that need to be reconstructed later, and those are the ones that are in the worst condition, and so it's kind of counterintuitive, and we really need to be talking with the public about why it's happening that way, because it may not make sense to them if their street's in really bad condition.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Rosen, I'm looking back here at the major sources of revenue on your PowerPoint there. And in the major source of revenue, it does not address your traffic concurrency fees. What is the total that you've collected for concurrency fees?
So those funds don't come into 101. Those are 105, and I don't have that revenue number, but this is specifically street maintenance. The next topic we're going to talk about is our arterial street fund. And then we don't have any projects planned to construct in this next budget cycle from the transportation impact fees. That's Fund 105 as a revenue source, but those are then generally transferred out into the 104 if we're going to spend them.
So you can transfer from 105 into this fund?
Not this fund, the next fund we're going to talk about.
Okay.
You know, and I want to clarify something because it gets really confusing. Concurrency and impact fees are two separate things.
Okay, so while you're on that, why don't you define that for all of us?
Yeah, that's why I stopped for a second, because concurrency is it's part of the Growth Management Act to ensure that our level of service stays consistent with our growth. So we look at each development or business that comes through and sees what impact it has on the level of service of our streets. And the separate part of that is an impact fee for their share of the cost to improve the streets. Sometimes they overlap, but a lot of times they may not. So they don't necessarily link together. And it gets really confusing. We're trying to work on a way to smooth that out right now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to smooth that out for me, because I'm always looking at those blended together. Is there a better way to define that?
We're
Give me an
trying-
example when you use concurrency fees and when you use impact fees.
You don't have concurrency fees.
So first of all, Joe is learning the planning lesson, so that's the really important takeaway here. So the concurrency is the process that we have to go through under state law. So there's an application fee for that, but that's as far as it goes. So you could do the concurrency test, and the answer may be they're not responsible for paying any impact fees. But every new qualifying project has to go through the concurrency review. The results of that review may tell us that they're required to pay a transportation impact fee, and if so, then they pay that fee, as you know, based upon the number of new trips which are created as a result of that project. But you could do the review and end up saying it's zero impact, and so there are no fees which have to be paid beyond the application fee for us to go through that process.
Okay, that clears that up. So then the next question is, what do you do with the money from the impact fees? You're going to get into that now. Is that the next step?
Okay, so let's get to the next section. So I'm going to let Joe talk about the arterial streets budget proposal, and that arterial streets are Fund 104. And you want
Sure. You know, it's motor vehicle fuel tax supports some of the revenue for this as well, 122,000. There's other fees, other revenue as well. The allowable uses are overlays, reconstruction, new construction on arterial streets, and I have a map of what that means in a minute. And then other potential funding sources are FHWA, so from the federal level, or from the state level through the Transportation Improvement Board. So I was wondering how this was going to show on the map, but you can kind of see the tan outline of the city limits. The red line going through the center town is SR20, and all the colored lines in between are arterials. So Streets Fund covers all of them, and then arterials focuses primarily on the federally classified streets. And it's a mechanism that allows us to go after federal and state money for projects that serve the greater community.
And these funds can't be used for maintenance activities. They can only be used for improvements.
Answer my previous question.
Just real quick right there. So overlays are not maintenance?
It depends on the thickness of the overlay.
Okay.
And I think I'm correct in saying the other distinction is that we have way more local streets than we have arterials, as you imagine. And you can't use these funds on the local street. So we're prohibited from taking these dollars and putting them into the, for instance, taking care of Northeast O'Leary Street. We're not allowed to use these funds to fix that street. As an example. Of a street that needs repair.
So two projects that we've chased down for funding is we've already been awarded for Northwest Heller Road, and that's from Woodby to Swantown, and that's a resurfacing. So it's a major project for us, and it's typically a 13.5% match on the grant funding. So we have to get started on the design part of that here pretty soon, get that started. And the next one that we're all familiar with is Northeast 7th Avenue. And we applied for, to the surface, to the Island Regional Transportation Planning Organization, IRTPO. I don't know why, it must have been engineers that came up with that one. In any case, we applied for grant funding and we scored number one with the local group, and it got moved up to the RTPO, and apparently it did really well there today even. And so we're intending to take that to the next step and start moving forward with design and right-of-way acquisition. And once again, if it was if everything balanced perfectly, we'd have a 13.5% match on those costs. And then moving into 2019 is when we'd look to actually implementing and start construction efforts. It's going to take a while to do the design. The right-of-way is really narrow and it's really jagged. And there's wetlands and permitting issues that we have to go through. So it's going to take the full amount of time to pursue that. And there's those pictures, I got those from Marnie. They were part of our application for the grant, and it's 3 very good reasons why that road needs some attention. And it's
Thank you.
Yeah, very short.
On the overlay of Northwest Heller Road, is there leftover impact or transportation impact fee from the Shannon Forest development that's been developed many years ago, and the sidewalk there on the west side of Heller Road is not improved yet?
I
Would
don't have
that
the
be
answer to that.
improved at the same time with that overlay?
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't have the answer to that off the top of my head.
Go
I
ahead, Mr.
represented the developer on that one, and they paid $52,000 for that, so.
Sounds like-
$52,000.
Sounds like good matching funds.
I don't know, yeah. It's out there someplace. But also, there's some issues with the power lines and all that kind of stuff, and the right of way, there's a lot more to it. But I have a question on the Heller and 7th Street improvements that you had up there. Especially 7th, will we be required to comply with the DOE LID regulations that are apparently going into effect for us here?
In a
And
different way.
if we have to comply with that, does your estimate represent that type of cost?
We will, but not in the same way as a development would. We are going to implement LID techniques to reduce the amount of impervious area that we add to the project. And there are, because anything that we add, we have to address somewhere in the project, and there's not a lot of places to do that. So we'll be implementing LID on the project just to make it work better for us. I didn't answer
What
your
does
question.
that mean?
So I don't believe we have to adhere to the DOE manual specifically, but we will be using the tools that it presents because we still have to manage the stormwater. It's a different layer, if I remember correctly.
I think streets are different, existing streets are different.
Which streets are different?
Existing.
Existing, okay.
But any increased runoff that we generate through the project, we have to address.
And then as we implement those LID designs down the road, who knows, 10 years, 15 years, then you're going to have to address the maintenance cost for those types of designs. I was looking at your curve that you had there on the life expectancy of some of the roadway systems. My gut instinct tells me that you're going to have a much shorter timeline and a higher degradation of those systems on your curve than what we have right now.
That's a whole separate conversation.
I know,
think.
yeah.
And the immediate proximity of the 7th Avenue wetland on both sides of the street further compound the problems that we're going to have dealing with the stormwater.
So we definitely have to have treatment before it enters the wetlands to
And the
protect
wetlands,
those.
They don't provide a treatment system in itself?
Yeah, I think if it was naturally introduced items, but if it's, things that, come off of your car or things like that, it needs to address those.
Separately. If there's a way to expect.
Thank you. Question on the Heller, you said from Whidbey to Swantown?
That's correct.
That's one of those, I think it would take some public education, because if you're to travel that road, which I'm on it often, it doesn't seem that bad. So the question would be, did we already secure that grant? Is that why that's prioritized higher?
That's correct.
Okay. Good with that, all right.
I mean, we haven't obligated the funds as a city, but we've been awarded the project funding-wise.
It seems like
So we're kind of in
very
between.
highly traveled between the base traffic or an
Mhm.
alternate thoroughfare to bypass the city to get out to Altfield to 20, so.
There's a lot of interest in that, and I know that there's some, the county has a project moving forward to address the Heller-Swantown intersection as well. So there's going to be some action going on, I think.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Alpert.
And those improvements in there include curbs and gutters, sidewalks, stormwater control systems?
Which ones? The ones?
Heller, I'm sorry,
Heller. I don't know. Probably not entirely like you would on 7th.
You're really looking at an overlay then
Mhm.
with the existing?
We'll
part,
do
part of
some.
that area has sidewalks, part of it has asphalt walkway, part of it's concrete, part of it doesn't. Sidewalks don't exist.
And honestly, that was part of the reason why we went with this section versus from Whidbey to Crosby, because there's much more sidewalk and retrofits for accessibility. And the retrofits for accessibility are not covered under the grant funding.
Thank you. Do we move along? And before we move along, go ahead.
More retrofits would be to Crosby than would be to Swantown?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Thank you, Mr. Robinson, Powers, and Weeks. Now to the next item, 2018 State Revolving Fund Loan Application Update. Dr. Merriman.
This last week, this is a council update on the funding package for the wastewater treatment plant. We've probably made what'll be our last application for new money to Department of Ecology through the State Revolving Fund, or SRF program. We went ahead and applied for $8.8 million, and this will be at 1% if that's accepted and goes through. Second component of that, we've asked the question if we can refinance our revenue bonds that we issued. Being that this is a 1% loan offering, our revenue bonds are at 3.43%. There's still some question on how that would work, but we wanted to make sure we wrote that into our application, that if that's available, we're able to do that. I've done present value calculations on that, and it's up in the millions of dollars, the savings on it, but we'll see. We still have a lot of work to go through in discussion with Ecology on that part of it. So that'll be going in. There have been times in the past we've come to council and asked for permission to apply the application. And you may remember that in 2014, we passed Resolution 1429, and that authorized staff to go ahead and take advantage of making applications when we can, so we don't have to bring those back every time we do that. So we've gone ahead and sent that in, and now we're just awaiting for Ecology's response on that, and we'll start getting through this process. But we just wanted to let you know we had sent that application out.
Thank you, Dr. Merriman. Any question on it? Mr. Kirby.
Interest rate, and that's exceptional. Is it, that's the lowest yet? Is it because it's a lower dollar amount?
It's each year they release what rate it will be. There's a standard rate that they do. And then there's a certain classification of cities. If you qualify for being a hardship city, and there's a couple different levels of that, you get a reduced interest rate. So the category that we qualify under, it's a 1% rate, and that's for this 2018 package application.
That's great.
Mr. Albert.
Thank you, Mayor Ken. You mentioned that you're waiting for a response from DOE on that application. Do you have an expected date of response?
Yeah, I would say usually after the first year, February-ish is when they start releasing the lists out. So we should hear something around that timeline.
Did we do something on 2017 as well?
We should. I did. What Joe's asking about is we got a couple of email. I got them today as far as it. We had the 2017 package, and it's kind of a consolidation somewhat of our past SRF loan packages and getting the final approvals on those. We have some signatures we have to send in, and I think they had a new form we have to fill out to go with it. I don't know if you guys got that email today as well, but so we'll be getting that piece sent in and getting that contract finalized with Ecology as well.
The funds have been approved for that, though, is that
correct?
That's exactly, and that's like what, 43 million in funding.
Yep.
So that's a good one to have in our pocket.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. If there's no more question, we'll go proceed to the next item. Pending agenda items, discussion of property tax levy. Finance, is that Finance Director? Patricia Soul.
So on the property tax levy, I just wanted to let council know that the implicit price deflator came in below 1%. It came in at 0.953, which is like the third time in the last 10 years that this has happened. So we will be bringing forth 2 resolutions to council, asking for substantial need and to get it up to the 1%. Put that option out there. Council, of course, can decide to stick with the 9.53%. 0.953%. So I'm working on that right now. I ran a couple of numbers just so you know the difference in dollars. If we went with the 1% based off of what our current levy is, just strictly increased at 1%, that's a $41,807 increase. If we went with the 0.953, it is a $39,436, so it's a difference of about $2,300. Based on inflation, if we go with a lower, it creates a bigger gap than the turtle and the hare gap. So that's something that's a council decision. I'll be bringing forth some slides and more detail on the 15th of November with those ordinances.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing that, we'll go to the next one, discussion of budget.
So the budget is now at the point of administrative review. And so Doug and I have been sitting down and we are making some cuts. We're going to be working with the directors and making sure those cuts make sense with them, and then trying to bring back a budget that has a less of a use of fund balance if we can. Due to that, we were anticipating bringing forth a draft budget on the 1st. We would like to push that out to the 15th so that we have more time to do some more in-depth analysis and take a really, really close look at everything. So that's what we're in the process of right now. Doug's brought the general fund down with some of his cuts that he's seen significantly, but we still want to take even a closer look at it.
So obviously, we're not in the surplus mode. Can you give us a ballpark as far as deficit where we're at still?
For the general fund, I would say roughly right now, because not all the cuts have been approved and gone through the process, we're probably running about $300,000 a year deficit right now with the general fund, right in that range.
And that's before you bring in what we currently have in as our beginning fund balance, which is about $1.4 million. So we're not utilizing more cash than we could. We want to get to zero if possible, but if we didn't, we're still keeping our cash balance above the line. It's not cutting us to the point where we can't operate.
Does that deficit include the bubble or rate inclusive sales tax to the wastewater treatment plant? Or is that using that?
We have actually taken that out.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Mr. Albert?
I would personally support pushing that draft date back to November 15th and take a good clean look at it, rather, so we don't have to look at it at the 1st and then the 15th again. On the surface, that appears to be more efficient to me with all of our time. That's my thought. It still gives us adequate time for completing our budget before our deadline.
Will the property tax levy go before you get the preliminary budget?
Property tax levy and the preliminary budget, we both presented the same day, the 15th.
Okay. Ms. Eisen?
Will we get to see the draft version of the budget or just the final version?
The goal is that on the 15th, it will be the draft version. It won't be the ordinance for approval. So you'll have the detail and the draft, our best budget that we put together. So you have time to review it, 3.5 weeks approximately, before I come in on the 6th, which is our goal date to present the final budget.
So we'll be able to see originally what everyone asked for and what was cut to what the final draft is going to look like.
We can provide that, yes.
Okay. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
No further question. We'll move to the last one. This is the second amendment to the interlocal agreement for HVAC replacement at the Oak Harbor Library.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We were before you about 6 weeks ago, I think, with Amendment 1. So this all started in March of 2016 when City Council approved an interlocal agreement with Skagit Valley College as the lead agency to design and bid the replacement of 16 HVAC units at the Oak Harbor Library and Hayes Hall building. And we share that, we have a cost-sharing agreement with Skagit Valley College. At that time, it was estimated, and this was before design, it was estimated that our share of the work, which is 43.25% of the total, would be about $170,000. They completed the design, and the engineer's estimate for that had increased to $500,080, which increased the city's estimated share to $216,603, which was what the council authorized in Amendment 1. Since that September 6th date, Skagit Valley College has solicited and received a bid. They only received one bid. They believe that it is a good bid. And that bid was in the amount of $378,345 when you add tax plus the soft costs, which include the architectural work and the design and administration of that. That brings the total estimated cost up to $528,556.12. The Department of Enterprise Services requires that that they carry a 10% contingency on their projects. Because I asked, could we go with a lesser contingency, and it's the contingency amount that pushes us over the previously authorized. That's not to say they're going to spend the contingency, but we don't want to move forward with this project without having council authorize that additional funding for a possible need for that contingency. So that would increase our share by about $12,000 up to a not to exceed amount of $228,604.85. So that will be on your next council agenda. I'm just looking for input. I know Skagit Valley College is anxiously awaiting because if we don't proceed, they have some decisions to make with what they're going to do as well. So.
Thank you, Ms. Frost. Ms. Hyacinth?
So because we have an interlocal agreement and we've already agreed to help them pay for this, do we have a choice? I mean, what happens if we change our mind? Are we allowed to do that?
We could technically say this is above our price zone.
Right.
Whatever the reason is we give, we could not do this. The interlocal agreement we have pertains to maintenance, janitorial, and security.
Mm-hmm.
We use the allocations from that interlocal to determine who pays for this project, but it's more or less kind of separate from that agreement.
Okay.
So we do have some options whether we participate or not.
But there's how many units are completely ours?
There's total of 16 heating units on there. 4 of them are totally the city library, and then 3 of them are shared. Okay. So there's furnaces that actually supply air to shared space. So we were kind of, in together with them. So.
Right. So those we would have no wiggle room on. Those are ours,
yeah,
and therefore our responsibility.
Yeah.
Definitely the ones on the library, and then if we chose not to participate on the replacement of the shared ones, Skagit Valley College would have to make a decision as to what they're going to do.
Okay.
But they are over 20 years old.
Yes.
And
they're located all side by side in the same area that they're trying to do the improvements on the the roofing and whatever they need to do in there. So they're all side by side inducted in there. So they're all kind of together.
I'm not opposed to participating. Because of the agreement, I'm just wondering if that's really an option or if it's a formality, I guess. So, thank you.
I think Ms. Wessinger got a question.
Oh. Yes. I mean, 7 out of 16 units, adds up to the 43%. I mean, it's pretty close. 4 does not. I mean, that's more like 25%. But who did the bidding? What was the overall? I mean, were we a part of? Is that the college went out and got the bids, and so we weren't able to?
The state took the lead on the project. They put together the state. Skagit Valley College is a state agency, so they put together the bid documents. They contracted with the architect. to put together the bid documents, and they solicited the bids. And under the state regulations, they are required to have that 10% contingency.
I mean, there could, because I'm just wondering if we decided not to participate in this, and I'm not an expert on construction or HVACs at all, you know, could we get our own bids to just do the work or replace the potentially 4 or 7 or 5, or, you know, is there other ways that we could, if that includes, if that would provide a cost savings or a more efficient way?
That might be.
It costs more because you have to go out and do the architecture and bids, and yeah, okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Mr. Umberg?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Ms. Rosen, what was the actual breakdown on HVAC versus the A&E cost? First of all, what's the HVAC? And that's for 16 units.
Yeah, I thought we included that in here.
Did we, am I overlooking something? Did I get a copy of?
Oh, so it's on the back. It's on the back of the, so the bid was $378,345. You add a contingency of $37,843.50. So it's on the back of the second amendment. It's right on the back. There's a spreadsheet. So in your packet. So after the agenda bill.
It's in the,
Well, just
Okay, so the bid is $378,345. 10% contingency is $37,834.50. 8.7% tax is $36,207.62, bringing the total construction cost to $452,387.12. They have little less than $75,000 for architectural costs and $1,500 for miscellaneous, bringing the total up to $528,566.
You know, that's more than 25. Wait, let me ask you this question. We're dealing with, we have a responsibility for 20,000 square feet. Is that not right?
What is it by square footage?
Do you know the square footage of the library?
It's in that.
It's in the original agreement.
Yeah. It's in the contract. I'm drawing a blank, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
City operated space was 8,900 square feet, and then 6,000 square foot shared, so it was 27,939 total.
Okay. The city's portion, our contract, our lease portion is 8,900 square feet?
That is the city operated space is the library's 8,900 for the library workroom. Yeah, 8,941.
And then we have some shared space.
Yeah, we have some shared space.
Explain what the shared space is.
The shared space is meeting room. The big meeting room in there is a shared space. The city
And we have an obligation
Yep.
to
Yes.
share that. That's a contract, a lease obligation to share on that one?
Yes.
Or we volunteered to do that?
No, that is in our original agreement for the library and Skagit Valley College that was
Okay.
entered into in the early 1990s.
And there was the reading room in the back, and then the entries, the staff lounge, and then the bathrooms in the entryway. There was some bathrooms there, and that's all shared space.
Why is that shared space?
Well, the bathrooms are part of the meeting room. That's the public bathrooms in there.
And that,
And that was all agreed to when we did the contract with the.
It just jumps out at me at $25 a square foot on 20,000 square feet. It's a really pricey system when you take in your A&E cost, the whole cost. Did we get a chance to look at the specs before these went out to bid? I mean, did you have any input on the type of system that's going in?
It's pretty much the same system as what they had. It's kind of changing.
It's not an upgrade in
It's
their
not much
system?
upgrade. There is some upgrade to the roofing and stuff. When they're in a well, on a pitched roof, you have this well. They're doing some upgrades to the membrane roofing and stuff and replacing that. While you have the chance, you got to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then there was also some upgrades to, there's partition walls, parapet walls kind of around that to shield them so people can't see them. A little history, we've had some issues with that library about gas fumes and all sorts of air quality complaints in that library for over the years. This has gone as long as I can remember, and I've been involved in it. And so there's a little bit of modification to reduce those parapets so they don't create a kind of an eddying of the air in there that causes the gas vapors to go back in the intakes. And there's some modifications there, but nothing really big. It's just some small stuff. Extending the stacks on the furnaces to get them up higher so they can catch the wind and get out of there and expel the gases better. So it's pretty much just same for same. The furnaces are more energy efficient, but not critically. Same kind of systems.
And
they meet the requirements now of all code energy requirements.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can get you if you want to. I can get you the specs for that or the project manual.
Can we talk more about the options more clearly defined in writing at some point, what the options are? As opposed to saying, yeah, let's just go ahead and say $228,000. We'll just pay it. I don't clearly understand what the options are.
Okay. We'll see if we can get something to articulate those for you then.
Oh, thank you. Mr. President, is it strange that only one company put a bid in? I mean, I'm sorry, but it seems to me people are looking for work to do, and the state gets it all organized and whatever, and they put out, and there's only one bid. Can't they turn it down and say, no, we want at least 3 bids? I mean, I kind of feel like this is a setup, but that's just me personally.
Well, they have the same requirements we do to publicly bid something. I think the time of year may impact. I mean, we're in the time of year where the heating companies are pretty busy and they don't have to go out and bid for work because people are calling them for emergency calls, those kinds of things. And so they may not have wanted to bid at this time. Our budget cycle is different than the state's budget cycle. They are trying to get this project done in this fiscal year for them. I think their fiscal year ends June 30th. So it may mean that, they may lose their funding. They may have to request funding again. And there's, they felt, when I spoke with Dave Hayes, the representative from Skagit Valley College, he was very comfortable with this bid, that it was a fair price and a good contractor. And was that your impression too,
Yes.
Rich?
Yeah. We asked the same question, why only one in this? And they researched it through. Well, they said that a lot of it, like Kathy said, was the time of year and this and that. Just the concerns that they're going to have a lot more expenses because if it's raining and this and that, it's going to slow it down. But they said, no, they were comfortable. They felt it was right in there. And they reviewed it with their architects.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up on that. Well, this, I don't completely buy that this time of the year. And I'm with Ms. Munns on this thing about going after having one bid out of this thing. This is a big project for any HVAC company. It's a good sized project. And I want to ask you this: did you or our engineering department review the specifications for this system before it went out to bid? Because a lot of the devil's in the details, in the way the requirements by the state or the government agency puts requirements in there, which are, many of them are what we know, what we have to do. But did we vet that? Because I'm not comfortable with one bid.
I looked at the specs, but they came in at about the same time they went out for bid. I mean, I didn't see them beforehand. that I, that
And then
I
on
just
the-
saw the specs on it, and what I saw looked pretty much everything on there. We were kind of looking at what could we take off of this thing if we had to take off, because they were talking about some exhaust fan work and that kind of stuff. And that was one thing they were considering taking off.
But we didn't go through the requirements that the state has
Yeah,
for
yeah.
bidding. They may have, by Washington or something, I don't know, that we might not have in our bid specs.
But we
So
don't know that.
they operate under different regulations than we do. For
Yeah.
example, they're required to have the 10% contingency. We can come forward to the council with a project and say, we're only gonna ask for a 5% contingency on this project.
And then on the timing, you said that, well, it may be their fiscal years, is June and they want to go. Why can't we budget for this thing and then go out and really fine tune the process and the bids? Why are we reacting to their timetable with our ratepayers' money?
So we have an interlocal agreement with Skagit Valley College that was entered into in March of 2016 that designated Skagit Valley College as the lead agency on this project. If we don't want to proceed with that, I think that we can say, that's like Dr. Merriman said, that's out of our budget range. We can't do this project right now. And then Skagit Valley College will have to determine how they're going to proceed forward. We may still have an obligation to pay for our portion of the 3 shared units. And then the 4 that only serve the library, we can decide what we want to do with.
So, Ms. Rosen, let me present this to you. So let's say we go ahead and we do this $228,000, and then we get down to fine tuning our budget with all of the departments. We're going to take something out of Mr. Powers, we're going to take something out of Mr. Powers again, and we're going to take something out of somebody else. And then we're going to come to you and ask you to give it up, something that you have to give up that's really critical to your department or to Mr. Powers or to police or fire, when it doesn't sound to me like we have really vetted this process out, given the option. Maybe it doesn't fit in our budget and we have to give up something that you or fire or other agents, other departments want to give up. Are you willing to do that?
I would look to administration because, from where I sit, we're kind of administering our side of the library maintenance, right? But those are policy decisions as to whether or not we want to participate in this project or not.
I think I might back up Mr. Omberg's comments a little bit. This isn't something where this is being funded by reducing other departments. So I want to get that one off the table right now. This would be coming out of our reserve or some capital money we have set aside. So we aren't risking impairing other departments if we proceed with this. So setting that aside then, looking at this project, the college approached us to see if we'd be interested in this project. It's their project to start with, their lead. So if we've agreed to go ahead and designate them lead and do that, we still want to do our due diligence, and Rich has gone through and looked at the specs. Timing has been a little off sometimes because we're not the lead, and we're kind of trying to stay in tune with what the college is doing on that side. So it's been frustrating for us. We've gone back and forth a couple times with them on the project. I know when we got the bid results in, I think we all looked at it and said there's only one. That was kind of a concern to us. But then again, as Rich looked at it, we saw that the specs look good. There aren't any big overages anywhere in there over and above what we're doing today that were of concern to us. From a budget perspective, $228,000, it's kind of like, it's a lot of money. And I think someone said, wow, a minute ago. I think that's what we all said originally, but it's one of those things. We are an owner in that building, and the question comes down to, do we do it today, participate and share some of those shared costs in the project? Or do we put it off, they go ahead and do their thing, we come in and do our 4 units ourselves some date in the future, but then are we in suddenly they all drop on us and now we're in a rush to get those replaced. The units, say they break down, we're getting into that Joe's useful life, is that?
Yes,
estimated useful life?
Joseph.
So when is the best time to do that? So those are the decision points we have right now to look at. Is now the time to do it? We can coordinate this with the college and do that at the same time. There's some benefits to that. The only thing is we want to make sure we answer your questions. You have some knowledge and different things here that are good things to take a look at. So we want you to be comfortable with that. But right now, from a funding standpoint, we can do it. Is it smart to do it now rather than later? Probably. Can we work this out with the college to maybe get a better deal? That's something where we're going to have more discussion on that then. You know, whether we want to accept it as one bid, or do we want them to go back and get more and see if competition will bring that price down. But that's a further conversation we're going to have.
Okay, allow me to share this with you. When you get one bid, typically there's an anomaly in the bid documents, either in the design or in the specification. Some people just don't want to do it. I mean, there are situations where people are busy, but more often than not, there's something else on the outside. Now, part of what makes me suspect about this is, and let's say company XYZ said, we're going to bid this thing, and we have a specific types of units, you know, Coleman, Lennox, whoever it's going to be. So they call the manufacturer and say, we want a price on this, we're doing this, and oh, by the way, who else has called in and asked for a price on these units? Well, you're the only one, and you get down closer to bid date, it's not that difficult to find out who's bidding the job. And you can find out if you're the only bidder, or if you know who you're bidding against, you know what your strategies are, very similar from years of doing this. And it's not that difficult for them to find out that they're going to be the only one in there. And if they're the only one in there, chances are you're not going to get the best price that you can get if you had 3 or 4 or 5 people bidding it. And 3 or 4 or 5 people would all be very good contractors doing that. So I'm more inclined to say we need to have a system where we have more than one bidder. That's my position on it. And I think that's fair to the ratepayers, and I think it's fair to us as a city, and it's certainly fair to the library, because if the price goes down, they benefit too.
Yeah, let me interrupt now. It's 5 o'clock. You want to extend this workshop? Perhaps this can be discussed on another meeting. It's 5 o'clock. I do recommend Dr. Merriman.
I think we were noticed starting at 3. I don't believe we have an end time set on this. So if we have a few more minutes to go, I think we're okay to do that.
Yeah, go ahead. Let me go to Ms. Hyson. Oh, you're for the
Just, I don't disagree with making an investment in a timely manner, but the history on this, we went from 170 to 216 to 228. 58,000 is a 34% increase since March. That's significant enough to say timeout. Let's try and refocus this. I do agree with Mr. Allenberg and Ms. Munns, I think that's what Ms. Munns was saying, that that's a significant increase, and it would be easy to say, hey, we're able to do this. But when I just heard, 45 minutes or an hour ago, that we're still running a significant deficit, and one of the ways to accomplish that is with beginning fund balance. Yes, this might be not a recurring cost, but it's a significant upfront cost that I'm open to seeing if we can at least get some more competitive bids.
And Skagit Valley College may choose to just move on the project on their own without us. That's the other option.
Let's hope they do.
Let me go to Ms. Hyson.
Thank you. I think Joel makes a really good point about getting from 170 to 228 and how that is suspect or alarming or whatever the word was. And this is probably hindsight, but this council is the one that made the decision to allow the library or the college to be the lead on this deal. So if we want to micromanage the bid process, then that's a decision we should have made when we agreed to let the college be the lead on the bidding process. For future reference, that might be a good idea. Or we could put in some provision about estimate increases. So because of the increase, I'm not really comfortable rubber stamping this, but because that's what we already said we would do, I'm conflicted about not, if that makes sense. That's my perspective.
Thank you, Ms. Wassinger.
If they do move on without us, if we delay it or ask for, say we're not comfortable with one bid, would they just not do the 4? And what about the 3 shared? We don't know that. I mean, I guess I'm
We have
looking
not
forward what
spoken
they
with
would
them
do
yet, but,
with the 3 shared. Okay. Or require us to pay for, go ahead, since we already signed the agreement to pay for our share of the 3 shared.
We already approved.
Okay, we just don't know. Yes,
right?
yeah.
Good for Mrs. Mike.
Thank you. It's always better to have a partner and to share. And as Mr. Taft said, they're all grouped together, and then they have the duct system. So if you repair all of them, but R4, sure seems like something could happen to R4, like the next week the project's done or something, and then we are really stuck. And then how do you make sure that you get a unit that's going to be compatible to that one? So I mean, it kind of, they leave it under about 3 rocks that are hard to tumble over. But also being able to say, hey, we budget, we approve this, but we're at our limit. This is our top dollar. You're gonna have to come up with that other percent or something. I just, it's amazing that in such a short time it's gone to 38% in price. I don't think we had reservations being a lead because no one thought we'd come back with one bid. I mean, we figured, state agency, they're putting this package together. Yeah, the rules are a little bit different, but who would have thought there was only one bid? And I didn't think about being able to call around and figure out, gee, we're going to be the only ones bidding on this. So I really, truly believe it saves us by being a partner and sharing in on the expenses. But I also know that we only have X amount of dollars. So I don't know if the deal is like, okay, our top limit is what we approved last time, and we just can't go over that, and see if and say, is there any way you can put it out for a bid again to at least have 2 people bidding? I mean, I don't know how you do the negotiations or things like that. I don't particularly want to micromanage this. I mean, we have good engineers, but it seems kind of strange that he got the specs the day it went out for bid. I mean, whether that, intentional or not, I don't know.
So what is putting us over the previously authorized amount is the requirement to have a 10% contingency. That's not guaranteed that that's going to be spent. It's in case something comes up, but we didn't want to come back later and say we got a problem and the money's already been spent. So I don't know what the answer is. We've authorized up to a certain amount. We need maybe less than 5% more.
Interlocal agreement between the city and the library, that the city will pay its fair share. I think it's stated there what the share, and I don't know the rest of the stipulations on that agreement. The city can decide something else if the city doesn't like the bidding, and Dr. Merriman made a suggestion that to pay for each share now than later.
Yeah. And remember we're not making a decision today. So one thing we can do, we've heard different perspectives and thoughts on questions we can ask the college about this, and maybe huddle up ourselves and see what options we have. And then when we talk about this again, we can lay these out and maybe have some further discussion on it.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Rosen, didn't the original proposal that we approved had a contingency factor in there too?
It was just based on a budget number from Skagit Valley College. They hadn't even completed the design yet. So the design came in, and in September that the engineer's estimate from the design or the architect's estimate had increased. So that's when we came to you with amendment number 1 in September. But the first number was just Skagit Valley College's estimate for budgetary purposes. They hadn't even contracted with the architect yet.
Okay, so I don't feel it's micromanaging to ask the questions when somebody comes at you with a preliminary estimate. We go through that at the wastewater treatment plant and everything else, and then you get reality when you get the bid. I don't even have a problem with the bid, I have a problem with the fact that there's one bidder, and it happens. And I'm sure it happened in this case. The contractor found out he was the only one bidding this thing and said, you know, we got a cherry, we got a lollipop here. and it went up significantly. Either that or the engineer's estimate wasn't worth a darn to be that far off.
Yeah, it increased, where's the agenda bill? It increased about $28,000 over the engineer's estimate. So between September and now, from the engineer's estimate to the bid with the 10% contingency, that increase was $28,000. So the big increase came between the budgetary number and the engineer or architect's estimate in September. That was the biggest increase. And that 28,000 is the total. Our share of that is 12. So our total maximum authorized would increase by $12,000.
So can I just ask one more question, then I won't ask anymore? So Ms. Rosen,
Yes.
if you had to make this decision, it's a policy decision, what would you do?
I would look to Dr. Merriman. Which I'm going to do right now.
Pass it on.
That's what we're all doing.
All right. I said I would only ask one more question. Would you please ask Dr. Merriman?
Pass it on to Dr.
Now I have a question.
We're out of time.
So, your recommendation?
Oh, why don't we get some more information together based on our conversation here and see if we can come up with a good discussion on this.
Okay, yeah. So this concludes our workshop meeting for today. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.